Do you find responsibilities in work, family, and health too overwhelming to handle? Welcome to Health, Wealth, and Relationships, Thriving in the Balancing Act. Join physical therapist and relationship consultant Dr. Gina Williams in building stronger connections, advancing your career, and elevating your overall well-being. Here you'll find practical tips, inspiring stories, and actionable strategies for living a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Health, Wealth, and Relationships, Thriving in the Balancing Act. I'm Dr. Gina Williams, owner of Mobility Health Physical Therapy, a physical therapy company based in Midtown Manhattan. And if you live in Manhattan, Brooklyn, or Queens, we can come to your home. We also have telehealth physical therapy services and in the tri-state area. So please check out our website at mobilityhealthpt.com. And if you're looking for more podcast episodes such like this, you can also go to mobilityhealthpt.com. Just click the podcast link. Today's guest is Irene Weinberg. Irene is the author of the acclaimed book, They Serve Bagels in Heaven, which shares her transformative journey through a profound car accident and its aftermath. Her international award-winning podcast, Grief and Rebirth, Finding the Joy in Life, ranks in the top 2% globally, featuring interviews with grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and inspiring stories of resilience. Her new anthology, Good to the Last Drop, embraces life's third chapter, offering inspiring, uplifting tales of overcoming loss and challenges in later life, advocating for living life's third chapter fully with love, kindness, and purpose. Welcome to the podcast, Irene. Everyone, you are in for a treat. Irene, how are you today?
I'm great. Well, I have to tell everyone you're in for a treat because Dr. Gina is one of my favorite people, and I know she cares a lot about me. So you're going to be part of a mutual admiration society when you tune into this interview.
Yes. We are friends, surely.
Yeah, we've shared a lot together.
Yes, Irene has a lot of experience and many stories to share with all of you. Let's start with your book, Irene. The book, They Serve Bagels in Heaven, details profound personal challenge. How did this profound experience shape your views on grief and healing and resilience?
Well, it's one of these things where I want to go, where do I begin? So
Yeah.
I'll begin back at I was not spiritual. I was married to the love of my life, who was my second husband, my husband Saul, for about 18 years. And we were kind of traditional in our religious beliefs and all, but did we really believe in anything? I had a sister-in-law who said she was spiritual. We thought she was cuckoo. So, we really weren't in that mindset at all. And one day I was just minding my own business at my kitchen sink, and I was washing some dishes, which I guess, Gina, you'd say is a little meditative. My mind wasn't really thinking. I was just kind of there doing my thing. And all of a sudden, a strong thought that was a message came into my head that was not my thought. And it said to me, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death.
Wow.
And I was like, what the heck am I thinking? This is crazy. It was absolutely not my thought. I filled a glass with water. He was watching a Jets game on TV. I kissed the top of his head. I gave him the glass of water, and I proceeded to think I was putting it out of my mind. But you don't forget something like that.
No.
And then 2 months later, Saul and I had a ski house in the Catskills, and we were coming home from our ski house. And we were on the New York State Thruway, Gina, for about an hour and a half. We were going 72 miles an hour, and we were in the left lane. And suddenly I felt our car go into a huge swerve. And I looked over at my husband, and he was sound asleep at the wheel. So I called out to him. I was like, Saul. And he woke up. He saw what was happening. And he went to pull the car out of the swerve, and instead we started to flip up into the air like we were in a gigantic roller coaster.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was unbelievable. So we flip up, We hit hard on the right side. Thank God we took no one else with us. We hit hard on the right side. We flipped up a second time. And when we flipped up the second time, I got a second message and it said, he's not going to make it. You are. Can you imagine? I'm in the middle of a flip
Unbelievable.
and that comes into my head. Then we flipped the third time and I left my body. I literally entered the void. I was like, what is this blackness? What's going on here? And then I felt myself go back into my body, finished the third flip, then flipped again. And on the fourth flip, we were upside down and we slid into a ravine on the side of the thruway. We
Wow.
held up traffic for 2.5 hours. There were still pieces of my car on the thruway 6 months later. And I'm upside down. I'm conscious. And I don't know yet which I'm going to get to you, how physical therapy helped me, but I don't know yet that I have sustained 4 unbelievable injuries. I had a torn artery in the bottom of my right foot, 19 stitches. I was bleeding to
Whoa.
death, 2
Oh my
transfusions.
goodness.
My collarbone was reversed inside my shoulder. I lost the ACL in my right knee, and I had a separated, detached retina. Well,
What an experience.
it was unbelievable. I look over at him, I'm upside down, and I look over at him and I go, Sully, are you okay? And I see that what I was told had happened. And I'm next to the shell of my husband. His whole vibrant, beautiful persona is gone. And I go, at the moment, I go, oh my God, there is something to this. Something's up. Something's really up. I was told he wasn't going to make it. He's didn't. And then I got the perception that he was still with me, that he was with me. And all of a sudden, as I'm thinking that, I see these EMTs in a helicopter, and they're landing on the thruway and they're jumping out of the helicopter. And there were 3 of them, and they were rocking my car back and forth to get it right side up on the road. And one of them came over and reached his arms through my shattered window, undid my seatbelt, turned me around, and as he was pulling me through the shattered window of my car, I got a message, and it was a voice, and it blew me away. It was literally a male voice, and it came into my head, and it said, be loving and kind to everyone, as they laid
Wow.
me on
In
the
that
side of the
moment.
road. In that moment, with my husband gone, physically gone next to me, and I'm being told to be loving and kind to everyone. And I felt I had a directive from heaven. It totally changed in that moment, it changed me. And instead of screaming for myself, I realized might be a divine something up here, that my husband must still be with me, that they had told me he was going to go. So obviously we go on, and there's some higher intelligence to life and what's going on. So instead of screaming for myself, I started saying to everyone, what's your name? Thank you so much for coming out. It's the weekend before Christmas. And they're telling me, ma'am, we have to tie a tourniquet around your ankle. I didn't know yet that I was bleeding so profusely.
Whoa.
And I said, bless you. Thank you for helping me. They load me in the helicopter, and they helicopter me to an emergency trauma center. And I do the same thing there. When the doctor comes over and he tells me, I have to tell you, your husband's gone. I said, Doc, I'm the luckiest woman in the world that I had this woman with me the years that I did. I totally felt that he was with me, and I was being loving and kind about everything to everyone. And so much so, even when the kids came, and I could go into that, but even when the kids came, because the police went and notified them and they came to see me and all, everything I did was with love and kindness, so much so that I got a call from the assistant to the surgeon who operated on me that night. And she said, I have to tell you, Irene, it was like 3 months after the surgery. And she said, I have to tell you that you changed lives in the emergency room that night. We never saw anyone respond the way you did. We've seen so many tragedies on this throughway. And I said, Trish, I had a spiritual awakening, and it's changed my life
Wow. From that exact moment on.
from that moment on. And so now I'm in the hospital for 3 days. And my sister-in-law, who I thought was cuckoo, comes to see me. She says, your aura has changed. I can see something really happened to you. Something is up. But now I go home 3 days later and I'm in grieving hell like the rest of the world, but I
Of course.
know something is up. I'm in a wheelchair. I have all these people coming to visit me because, Saul's suddenly gone. I have to plan the funeral. I've got issues
Mhm.
with kids, with finances. Oh my God, it was unbelievable. But I'm going through the paces. I'm crying my eyes out. I'm going through all this and I'm going, what in the world? I got those messages. And about 6 weeks after the accident, I was just about out of the wheelchair and I get a call from my dry cleaner. Now, if anyone knows me for about 2 minutes, I'm very friendly and you can tell, and I talk to everybody. So I would go in, I'd bring my dry cleaning. How you doing? We chat about things. He said, Irene, I wouldn't normally do this with anybody, but you seem to be very open-minded. And he said, 8 years ago, my wife and I don't tell people this, but 8 years ago, my wife and I lost our oldest son to a drug overdose,
Mm.
and we were besides ourselves. He said, and we went to grief counselors and social workers and all kinds of people. He said, no one could help us until we saw some mediums who were able to connect us to our son's soul. And
Wow.
this is what he told us, and this is the proof we got. And we're going to see this guy who's going to be very famous one day. He's just starting out, but he's amazing. And we're going to see him in 2 weeks. And I thought, if you're open to it, you could come and maybe Saul will come through.
Mm.
Gina, I had no idea what he was talking about. I had none, but I knew something was up. I got the messages and all of this happened. I was like, okay. So I'm just out of the wheelchair. 2 weeks later, I'm in Saul's car, and I'm telling you for a reason. I'm in Saul's car and I'm driving to one town, 5 towns away from me, where my dry cleaner lives in New Jersey. And where this medium's going to be is another 5 towns in the other direction. I leave my car there. I'm telling you for a reason. I leave my car there, and now my dry cleaner takes me in his car to where they call it a gallery, where people gather to hear from their deceased loved ones through a medium. And I walk in with my dry cleaner, and this young man says to me, I don't even want to know your name. Go upstairs. And at the time, this was 1997, before voice recorders and all that. At the time, people who were grieving brought a friend or someone to take notes. So I had my dry cleaner with me, and it's like Saul waited for about a half an hour for all these amazing messages to come through, and I'm going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I mean, he's getting messages like I'm getting a message from someone who says that he shot himself in the head with a pistol. Oh, that's my father. I mean, these were amazing things he could not possibly know. And suddenly, and the medium was the famous John Edward, who,
Ooh, wow.
right. And I mean, it didn't even cost me anything at the time because I was with the dry cleaner and John Edward was just starting out. And he said, I'm getting a message from someone. He's talking about Dr. Pepper. Does anyone relate to Dr. Pepper? And I elbowed my dry cleaner and I said, Joel, start writing. And because 15 years before he met me, my husband's brother, who was an advertising executive on Madison Avenue, put my husband's name in a Dr. Pepper commercial. And it was like, Dr. Pepper's coming east from California. Let's talk to the man in the street, Saul Weinberg, about what he thinks about Dr. Pepper, not Joe Smith, not George Williams, nothing like Saul Weinberg. So Saul used to laugh about that. And it happened 15 years before he met me. And then I'm getting all these messages, so many messages for 40 minutes that John Edward literally said to me, how long is this guy on the other side? And I said, 2 months. He said, this is a mature soul. Just the way he is taught. And I'm sure he probably wouldn't say that today. He said, but just the way I'm getting these messages. And then he said, all these messages, he's telling me you're wearing his skier charm under your blouse. How the heck could he?
How would he know that?
He's telling me he died in one state, but you live in another. How could he know that? He says, who's Matt? That's my son. Who's Bruce? That was his son. Whose name starts with an S? That's his daughter. And then he said, the kicker for me, he's telling me that you're driving his car with Saul Z on the license plate. Now that
How
was
spot
parked
on.
right. That was parked about 6 towns away. There was no way he could know that. And my husband was a real estate developer and he sold condos, and the kids loved him so much who he sold condos to that they used to call him Uncle Saulsy. So that's why he had
Aw.
Saulsy on the license plate. So this is like this amazing thing happens. And now I know my husband's on the other side. I know there's another side. And the only person I can really call and share with is my sister-in-law, who I thought was crazy. And she said to me, thank goodness, because 2 weeks after the accident, he came through to me. And I
Oh.
said, Saul, why are you talking to me? We weren't getting along when you died. And he said, because I thought you were crazy and you're not. And I'm here and you're the only one open and I need to get messages to Irene. And there
Wow.
were and there were messages about each of the kids, and there were messages, literally messages about business deals he had left me with. It was unbelievable. So now I'm
Wow.
out there, Gina. So here I am. I'm out there and I'm in a wheelchair. No, but no longer in a wheelchair, but I'm going to physical therapy, thank God, which really gave me a chance because I'm going through so much. And whether the physical therapist resonated with what I was saying, I could tell my story while they're
Yes.
working with me, they're helping me. It was really, and I really needed it because 4 times, well, 3 times I had 3 different physical therapists. Once when I got my foot, when the stitches and the operation for my foot and to bring my foot back. The second time I had to bring my knee back. I had lost the ACL. I was in physical therapy
That's a
for
long
that.
rehab.
It was a long rehab. And that physical therapist did me a great favor because he said, with all that you've been through, I really think you ought to have yoga. You ought to go for yoga. That would be really helpful to you. And I was like, basically, yoga? But right, yoga?
Yeah, you never
But
did it before.
I had never done that before and I really didn't understand it, but he recommended someone and I started taking yoga with her. And wow, that was a great gift because the accident happened when I was 50 years old. I've been doing yoga now for well over 20 years. And what a
Wow.
difference as you're getting older and all of that,
Yes, it does. Yoga is
right?
important.
And then the other physical therapy I had that was the worst. I don't know how people rate their pain, Gina, but I also had my collarbone was reversed inside my shoulder. And I had major surgery on my shoulder. And oh boy, did that hurt.
That's a
And
painful surgery and a grueling rehab, but we get better, but it's not easy.
it was really tough. So once again, there I was in physical therapy, doing my, trying to pull myself together, trying to figure things out. And in the meantime, this spiritual stuff is happening to me. I'm going to different mediums. And all of a sudden I'm opening up and I can't tell anyone in my world that I'm doing this because they would all, like I used to
Think you're
think it was,
nuts.
think I'm nuts. And these mediums are telling me Saul's describing to them the first meal I ever made him, how he kissed me the first time. He described his toes through somebody. I mean, there were no,
Wow.
he, in every way that he could, honey, it's me, it's me, it's me. I'm on the other side. And then I started getting another message. Now, remember, I got those messages. Something was up. And the message was different mediums started telling me that he's saying there's a divine plan. You've been soulmates for many lifetimes, and there was a divine plan that if he had to leave early, you were going to work together from across the veil. What? But it what? But it said, but it in a way it felt right. But I said to them, what do you want me to do? And they said I was supposed to write a book.
Wow.
So I thought that was all that I was supposed to do. And I found someone who was able to communicate with Saul. And I asked him all these questions. What happens when people are evil on the other side? What was it like for you to cross over all this? And we fashioned the book into not only, which it is, it's a love story, but filled with the spiritual wisdom that he channeled to me about what happens. And then I called it They Serve Bagels in Heaven because he described that when you cross over, they create a visual for you or an experience for you so that you can relate to your comfort zone where you were coming from in this lifetime. So Saul, when he crossed over, his mother, who had died when he was 16, met him and they had bagels and coffee in heaven.
Oh,
That was the visual
sweet.
that he received. So I called the book They Serve Bagels in Heaven. And then I was like doing my thing. and in the world. And I thought that was all I had to do. And then one day I was at my desk, right where you see me, and I suddenly got the word podcast in my head. And I was
Mm.
like, I'm getting another message. What's a
Wow.
podcast?
So what inspired you to create the podcast? What was that about? And how has it changed from when you started to now?
So it was pretty amazing, because remember, everything for me was step by step. And like when this happened, just like having faith, and can't share it with a lot of people because they would all think I was crazy, and
Mm.
holding on to my truth and going forward anyway. So I get the message podcast. I'm like, I don't get a lot of messages. I got those 3 messages, and now this is coming in my head. I asked someone who I knew, "What's a podcast? I'm a baby boomer. How do I know what a podcast is?" You know, so she said, "Oh, I can help you with that." So now I'm thinking, I'm being told I'm supposed to start a podcast. It must be part of this divine plan with Saul. So I said to myself, who am I going to interview? And then I thought, I could not have gotten through the accident if I hadn't worked with a life transition coach.
Mm.
Medium saved my life because he was coming through to show me he was on the other side. I also was I also had started work. Now I opened to energy healing. I mean, I'm
Mm.
doing all these things. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to interview grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and because of me, the what I was going through. And I just want to add for everyone listening, when they pulled me out of the car, aside from getting the message, be loving and kind to everyone, on the earthbound plane, Irene's brain thought to herself as I was sliding through the car, I will get through this somehow,
Mm.
because I have to show my son. My husband was buried on his 21st birthday.
Oh.
I have to show my son that you can get hit by a grenade in life and keep on going. So I had kind of programmed myself. So I also wanted to interview people who had been through tremendous challenges in their lives and been able to heal them and be able to find joy again. Because about 4 years after the accident, my son said to me, you know, Mom, there's been nothing worse than seeing you in total despair, and
Oh.
nothing better than seeing you be able to have joy again. So I said, you know what? I'm going to inspire people, and that's what I want to do, and bring forth all the different ways, including
Mm.
through physical therapy or whatever, and all the different ways that people can heal and help
Mm.
themselves. So the
Wow.
podcast, over after I started it, I started interviewing all these, these people, and it starts to change lives, and people were becoming very inspired. So it grew and it grew and it grew, and now it's in the top 2% of 3 million podcasts, and it's
Wow,
helping so
congrats.
many people. Thank you. I mean, I am, from what happened to me, I am so humbled
Mm.
and honored that this is happening, and it has nothing to do with my ego. It's like part of what I'm supposed to be. And you know what? When you're a baby boomer and you're getting older and something like this happened to me, I look at it as a blessing, because my contemporaries, they're hanging out, waiting to get sick. They have these, you see them walking around with, oh, I'm gonna die, with these negative attitudes.
And not
And
living life to the fullest.
no, no, and I'm like totally opposite that.
Mm.
I'm doing these amazing things that are helping people. I'm humbled all the time. I'm really thrilled. I met you. I met all these
Yes.
amazing people. It's like such a blessing, right? So,
Yes.
right, so I continued to do that. And then I got another surprise. I'm dealing with the podcast, and I'm going fine with the podcast, and all of a sudden I get a message from through a medium that I'm supposed to write a second book. I said, second book, so um they said, there are a lot of people who need to be inspired about the third chapter of their lives. We have
Mm.
3 chapters: the formative years, and then our middle years, and then the retirement years. What legacy are you
Mm.
leaving in your retirement years? So I called the second book Good to the Last Drop, because hopefully we stay really good till our last
The last
drop.
days,
And,
yes.
and I'm not afraid, because at that last drop, we cross over, we don't cease to exist.
Yes. That's amazing. That's true. So you've interviewed so many healers and trauma therapists and mediums. Can you tell me what's the most surprising, impactful lesson you've learned from your guests?
Yes, definitely. The first thing I've learned is that we don't die. I've
Mm,
interviewed so many mediums and healers and all, and we do not die, just our body, just
mm,
this physical body, but we go to the other side. We had come here to learn lessons.
mm,
And I've also learned that it's really important to heal your stuff, because people who carry their wounds from generation, family generation to generation, and they keep moving the wounds forward, they are carrying this backpack filled with
mm,
suffering and filled with sadness, depression, all kinds of things. And if they heal it, they can drop that backpack and they can really feel joy. So that's another thing that I've learned. And the
mm,
other thing, there are two other things, real, and I probably could go on more than that,
mhm.
but there are, one is that when it comes to being loving and kind to everyone, that means me too. We have to take
Include
care of
yourself,
ourselves.
self-care.
Self-care is so important, and you are worth it as much as you take care of everyone else in your life.
Mhm,
You need to be you don't need to do anything, but you can choose to be a role model and take really good care of yourself and love yourself too. And that
mhm,
has nothing to do with narcissism.
mhm,
That has to do with being the best you can be for yourself and others in your world. And then the other thing that really surprised me that I've learned is that when you cross over, there's no judgment.
mm.
There is no
Wow.
judgment. You get a life review, and you
Mm,
came here to learn lessons, and
mm,
you get a life review. It's almost like a movie review or a trailer where you get to feel every way that you made others feel in your life, so that you learn, because you came to learn certain lessons and to love, pass love along. And
mm,
when you don't do that, that's, well, maybe you need another lifetime to get that lesson
mm.
down. So you get a life review about that.
Wow,
You
that's
know, so you
interesting.
and you come and you come away with from that. I've learned, this was what I've learned. And there are healing places on the other side, and there are all different things that go on, and people land in different planes. There's no hell, but they land in different levels depending on how high their vibrate, how much love and how high their vibration was
Mm,
in this lifetime that you came from, and how you process things and the choices that you made. So like, this is a very funny story for everyone. I'm very open. My parents didn't have a great marriage. My father
mm.
was actually quite abusive. My mother was a battered woman. So when my father died before my mother used to say to me, if your father meets me when I cross over, I'm not going. And
Whoa.
she would
He's like, I'm not you. You're not the one I
I'm
want to.
not going. I had enough on this side. I'm not hanging with you on the other side. Nope, 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 nope. So,
Oh my
so,
goodness.
so, one of the messages I've gotten from my mother, I had said to my mother when I spoke to her through a medium. So I said, so have you seen Dad after she crossed over? And she's, well, he's on a little different level than I am. He can't come here to see me, but I can
Oh.
go to see him, but I'm taking my time till I get there.
Needs a break.
So, but that tells us, so my father obviously landed on another level, and I'm sure he's doing healing and all. And my mother was the more evolved, the more mature soul.
Mm,
So those are a lot of the um things that I've learned,
hmm
um, you know, from these experiences, these amazing interviews I've had, all the incredible people who I've met
mm,
through
wow.
this podcast and through the books and all of that.
Wow. So tell me, Irene, what role do you think relationships, especially with ourselves, play in healing from grief and moving forward in the instance of a trauma?
It's so important. Well, first of all, for instance, when I had all this trauma and all, and I went for physical therapy, that was a form of really taking very good care of my physical house. But in addition to that, I was also going for psychological therapy because I needed help to move forward in my life. And I considered those things self-care. The other thing I started to do is I started to do luxurious things that I used to think
Mm,
was a luxury that I would never do. I started getting facials. I'd have a
mm,
massage every once in a while. I took care of myself.
mm,
And I one of the things that happened is when I was doing that, I got more respect for myself.
mm,
I really started feeling better when the accident first happened. I absolutely paid no attention. I was a mess. I paid no attention to really my grooming.
mm,
Which was so unlike me. I was
mm,
so depressed, and I wasn't working out I mean, even though I was healing from all these things, but I was in a malaise.
mm,
I was blue. But once I started taking care of myself and loving myself and moving forward out of my tremendous grief, I started becoming very proactive. Once I finished therapy, I started working out. I started taking that yoga. I started, doing all those things. And it not only did it make a difference for me, but people started to say, "Wow, you look great for your
mhm.
age, and what are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm just taking care of myself."
Wow, that's that exemplifies the importance of just taking care of ourselves.
Taking care of ourselves, because how are you gonna take care of the other people in your life if you're falling apart?
That's true.
And, for my son, when he said, "There's been nothing better than seeing you be able to have joy," that happened 4 years after the accident. He was
Mm,
watching, and I'm teaching him. I was teaching him because stuff is gonna happen in his life too. And so because of the actions I took to help myself, he saw that, and he saw how I started getting healing and getting better
mm.
and better and better.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about the third chapter of life and after retirement or major life changes? How can someone, get that sense of purpose and fulfillment?
Well, we all have experiences in life, don't we, Gina? We all have negative experiences. We all have traumatic experiences. We all have different things that happen and wonderful things that happen to us. So in your first chapter, you're a kid, your
Mm,
parents are telling you things that later on in life you may not necessarily ascribe to, but that's their belief or whatever. And the second chapter, we start going through, we're married, we have children, we have all this, we're creating our careers. Now you get to your third chapter. Supposedly you're retiring, you're hoping for good health. What are you doing with the lessons from your first two chapters? Are you
mm,
being bitter for every single trauma or every time someone wronged you? Or have you healed that stuff to unload your backpack? And now are you going to take the lessons from that and the good things that happened in your life? And are you going to create a legacy? See, I'm not afraid of dying anymore. So
mm,
the question is, I know I'm crossing over. So the question is, what am I leaving after I leave? What am
mm,
I leaving in my wake? That, and it doesn't have to be something grandiose. It can just be something like I asked all these people for my book, Good to the Last Drop. I had 24 people who I had interviewed who had amazing stories. They had lost children,
mm,
they had had cancers, they had had all kinds of things happen to them. Perfect example of these people who went through such trauma, such grief, but they took from it amazing things. Like one guy, his son was killed when his son was 19 years old. He was killed in a car accident. He has become a grief coach for men.
mm.
Another woman, she had a stillborn child, and she never properly grieved this stillborn child until
Wow.
one day she heard an interview I had on the podcast as she was nearing retirement. And I
Mm,
was interviewing a woman who specialized in, the woman had two or three stillborn children. And this woman had created a certification for helping people who lose infants and young children. She felt that there was
wow.
not enough help on the planet for people who go through those kinds of things. And so this woman was listening to this podcast interview. It's a perfect example. She's coming towards retirement. She really didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. And all of a sudden she says, "Oh my goodness, this applies to me.
Mm,
I never properly grieved my own loss of my child. And I didn't know what I was going to do. You know what? I think I'm going to take training to become a grief coach, and I'm going to specialize in infant loss. And
Wow.
this is her legacy. At this, in her third chapter, she took this certification and she opened a department in a hospital
Mm,
where she specializes in helping people who have lost young children or
wow.
infants or
How
stillborn
important.
children. Isn't, I mean, but and then there are other people in the book, they didn't do as grandiose things, but they're doing amazing things with their lives. One guy, he lost his wife, and he had a terrible heart attack, and it left him in a wheelchair, and he's in assisted living. He was a Canadian Mountie, and he has done all
Mm,
these things in his life, and he's passionate about the environment. He is working on climate change, and he meets in his assisted living, and he has these meetings about climate change, and they inspire people, and they reach out about climate change. So there he is in a wheelchair. You would think his life is, he lost his wife. He had
mm.
he had a heart attack, yet he has found a mission that is inspiring him and keeping him literally alive and going.
Amazing. Yes, it's finding the thing that you can, develop and inspire other people seems to be very helpful when you have trauma that you're working through.
Yeah, yeah. So, so that's just, these are beautiful stories, and and people who are telling me they're reading them, and they say it's so uplifting, because I've gotten to that age and I didn't know what I was going to do. Now I'm starting to really think about,
Mm,
hmm, do I still have more to give, and what will that be?
what's the
What do
next?
I want to, leave for my kids besides maybe money or that or that? No, but we're talking about
Yeah.
inspiration
Yes.
and role
Legacy.
modeling. Yes.
Hmm. So, Irene, you advocate for kindness, love as a guiding principle in life's later stages, especially. How can these values help people navigate challenges that arise with aging?
The best thing I can say for everyone listening is one of the big things that I've learned as you age, and you have more years behind you than you
Mm,
have in front of you. Maybe you don't have to be such a good girl or a good boy anymore when there are toxic people in your
mm,
life.
mm,
I have really learned that, I call it, I detach from these kinds of people with love. I don't want them
mm,
wasting my time and the precious moments I have left running around some people in circles trying to please them when they can't be pleased, and they've got all kinds of issues, and they're not healing their issues,
mm.
and they're trying to displace them onto me or to whoever. So I don't get all caught up in that anymore. But what I do is I kind of distance myself from them, send them love, but I don't need them in my presence to bring me down.
Yeah.
And some people get they're very, you know, when you get older, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily mature. Some people get older and they don't do any
They
healing,
stay the
and
same.
they say the same. So if they were that same jealous little immature kid, and that's who they're bringing into their later years, why do you want to hang around with that little jealous insecure kid who is not going to be a positive force in your life?
Great point.
You
Yes.
know.
Get rid of that energy and just find the people who, make you feel good and positive and motivate you.
That's right, who uplift you. I
Mhm.
mean, and I've separated out from a few with love, but I don't need to be with, I'm not gonna, I know that's their stuff, and I know they
Mhm.
never did their healing work, and that's okay. Maybe they'll get it the next time around or whatever, but that's not my
Mhm.
concern over here. I just want to surround myself with positive, not that the positive people in my life never have a problem, but
Mhm.
their general attitudes are very
Yeah.
positive. They're
Mm.
trying to help themselves
Mm.
as opposed to wallowing in that self-pity pit.
Yes, yeah, makes sense. So true, Irene. And that's very freeing to let them be, not hold any angst or, any ill feelings against them, but just, don't involve them in your daily.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of times they have very negative messages to kind of thrust on you. And I don't agree, and they're not the kind of people that you can change their mind or argue with them. Why are you wasting your breath? They
Yes.
are on their path. They are who they're gonna be. They can't change unless they choose to change.
That's true. It's their own personal choice. Um, Great advice, and just keep it at that. And that makes me feel younger already because they weigh you down. They
They
age you.
they do. They do. And if they're and they some of them are very bitter
Mm,
and or very jealous. And I
mm.
don't want any of that energy coming at me at
No,
all.
Irene is the most amazing, positive, enriching, motivating, and uplifting person I know, and she's very amazing. And so,
Thank
where
you.
can people find more about your podcast and you? Where can they listen to your podcast?
My podcast is on anywhere they get their podcasts. Plus, I have an amazing YouTube channel.
Mm,
Please come and subscribe. And I also, you can get on my website, ireneweinberg.com, and find out all the things I'm doing, find out where you want to get the podcast. All of that is right there, ireneweinberg.com, or you can go to Spotify or wherever. And the name of the podcast is Grief and Rebirth.
Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Right. Which I is very much part of. I was so in grief, but after I healed and started to transform, it's kind of a rebirth.
Hmm, amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Irene, for being on the show. It's such a pleasure to have you speak and talk about your experiences. We can go on and on. So,
We
if
could.
anyone's looking for more of this episode of the podcast, please go to mobilityhealthpt.com or you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much, Irene.
My pleasure. Much love to everyone. And
Yes,
to you,
take care.
Gina.
Thank you so much.
That's all for this episode. May this discussion full of actionable tips and valuable advice guide you towards better possibilities in your personal and professional life. Continue your journey of unlocking your fullest potential by listening to more episodes of the podcast at mobilityhealthpt.com. Achieving stronger relationships, securing a thriving career, and embracing a healthier lifestyle may be daunting at first, but it is not impossible. You have the power to unleash the best version of you today. Until next time.